So, as always, very appreciative of people giving up what is potentially their lunch break to join us as we talk about all different elements of the living laboratory and what we're here to do and some of the different stakeholders and partners that we're working with. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Mark Hanna, who is the Country Lead Asset Management UK and Ireland for Kadans Science Partner, our property developer partner who we're working on with the Health Innovation Hub. And thank you for flying up to join me in person today, Mark. So the Health Innovation Hub we've talked about in some of the earlier webinars because it's a key part of the Living Laboratory programme. It's situated within the Glasgow Riverside Innovation District that we've talked about before. So actually, I think it's going to be really interesting to hear your perspective and your take on why Kadans are investing in Glasgow, because you're an international property developer. There's lots of places that you could go. We're obviously very pleased that you are here in Glasgow. I have my thoughts about what is good about Glasgow, and that's part of the job that I'm here to do. But I'm really keen to hear from you as a representative from Kadans. And so I guess before we get into the question that you posed for the webinar, it's probably useful to just share a little bit about who Kadans are, what you do, and then we'll move on to perhaps the more provocative elements of the webinar.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, thanks for having me. It's glad for me to be back north of the border.
Yes.
People can probably tell from the accent, I'm from these parts, but Edinburgh originally. So I'm very passionate about the Health Innovation Hub as a project. It does mean something to me personally, as well as professionally. So yeah, it's great to be back here, and sorry for missing the event last October. My colleague Bevan stepped in, so thanks very much for that. Yeah, so my background, I'm a property person. So as we go through the presentation today, I guess hopefully you'll keep me right on all things lifetime.
I will do my best.
But yeah, it sounds like a comedy joke, property surveyor and a scientist. But yeah, so Kadans are a European kind of platform, and we've got assets around Europe, which I'll discuss in a little bit more detail moving forward. And obviously I appreciate the title of today's slightly provocative, but it's kind of meant to be, just trying to get people's attention and really sort of prompt the conversation around why is Glasgow a really great place to be. We also think it is, that's why we're part of the project.
Yes.
So yeah, hopefully we'll get stuck into some good points and open to some interesting questions coming in too. So
yes, and I'll just take this early opportunity to remind people, if you do have questions, please put them into the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. And I'll just put a few other reminders through the webinar as well.
Yeah, so I thought it'd be interesting just to start off with this quote for people to have a think about. It is from a famous chap who's from the west of Scotland, and he has actually worked at the university back in the day. I'm assured this is a quote from him, so if I've got this wrong, this could be awkward by the end of the session. But I think it's a really good quote. I really like it. And it does really get to the point of what a lot of our customers are trying to do. They're trying to invent new and interesting technologies to help meet the global challenges that we face today, and that's clearly one of the things we're trying to do at the Health Innovation Hub and through the Living Lab project as well. So yeah, one to think about, and we ask a lot of questions of our customers when they're coming into our portfolio. We had a chap down in Oxford who was a dentist and unfortunately had 3 or 4 different types of cancer all at once, managed to survive them all, just had a complete life change, and decided to sell his practice and set up a company called Continuum Life Science, which is kind of looking at blood cancer researches. So we have stories like this across our whole portfolio of super interesting people who are trying to come up with new inventions to figure out the challenges in which we face. So
I have to say, I really like this quote, and I didn't know who had said it.
I don't know if it is, otherwise
I tried to look it up very quickly before this webinar, but Mark told me who it was, and actually I found it really complementary to what we have been thinking about in the Living Laboratory. You know, people come with an invention or an idea, and they think they know what it's going to be, but actually sometimes we find that just opens a conversation to a whole different opportunity around that invention, but then also just other ways to work to support, you know, those researchers or those companies on different components of the programme, you know, like some of the science engagement or STEM activities as well. So actually this resonated really strongly with me.
Good. Cool. That's a good start. Next one. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about Kadans for people who might not be aware of who we are. We're a developer, investor, and owner, specialised assets across Europe. A little bit of a jazzy map up there, and effectively everything in orange is where we have a physical presence, and everything kind of grey is areas we're looking to in the future. The business has been around since the early 90s. Started with a group of investors in the Netherlands, we're a Dutch company, pooling money to buy a whole bunch of different asset classes, not just laboratories and other technical real estate assets. It was shops, offices, the usual stuff. But over a period of time, that kind of evolved into the fund effectively acquiring university assets over in the Netherlands, starting in 2009 with the Biopartner Centre in Wageningen. Hopefully pronounced that right. It's always a difficult one. And it kind of went on from there, sort of divested out of all the other asset classes and really honed in on life science assets as a class, probably before most people jumped on that bandwagon, and it was before it was cool in Europe anyway. There's a brief ownership with Oaktree, and then in December 2020, we're acquired by AXA, so part of their alternatives division, but very much run as an independent company. And as part of that kind of deal, we released just under £2 billion worth of equity to develop properties across Europe, and Health Innovation Hub is obviously one of them. So yeah, it's big accelerated growth across all the key European cities that you see there, and there's some killer stats on the screen. How does it work in partnership? People usually say, well, that's great, you've got all these connections. How does it actually bear fruit for people like Glasgow and stakeholders? We're operating in another city in the UK where they were very keen about it. We asked them specifically, what is it you actually want to have? And they wanted a very specific type of research developer to be coming into the city to supplement what they're already doing. I think it's biosimilars. So we actually work with a very large company who do that in Europe already. So to make that connection was relatively simple, and it's now led to really deep conversations about them coming to the UK. So that's where that relationship and that kind of ecosystem starts to actually link together. So it's not necessarily just stuff on a screen. Do try and live that, and that's what we're also going to try and bring to the Health Innovation Hub here in Glasgow.
So I'm curious, I think it was 2018 or 2019 when I first started engaging with Kadans around this project. That feels like a very long time ago in some ways, and in other ways it feels like yesterday. And so I'm aware of the trajectory that Kadans has been on. What do you think is the sort of a secret to Kadans's success?
So I think there's a little bit about the legacy. I think having done this for a long time, people want to know if they're partnering with a company that there's someone that they can trust. That's I guess the key's in the name, Kadans Science Partner. That's a large element of it. We've seen some of our buildings go through a 10-15-year life cycle now. So on the boring property side, we kind of know how they're managed and know how they're run. We've got that expertise. And our operating model is quite different to a lot of other competitors in this arena as well. There are some others, but we develop it ourselves. We build it. As one of our colleagues was on the program, James Dawson. Yes. We manage it. That's Nadika on our team who manages it. We've got people who lease it. We've got our own fit-out managers, own ecosystem, stakeholder managers, where we deliver a lot of this stuff in-house. And I think that is certainly something that we hear and see from our customers as being really important to them, that they don't have multiple layers and multiple people to go to. They ultimately still have access to, I guess, my boss James and Stein directly as well. It's a relatively flat structure, so people know that they can go and speak to other colleagues if they're not happy, or if there's expansion opportunities, or their business is facing challenges as well. Ultimately, tests come around, things with COVID and businesses contract. How do you support them? If you support them, they tend to be quite loyal. So kind of multifaceted.
What do you do to facilitate, like companies in Glasgow engaging with other companies, across your sort of international property market? Yeah, so we've got a stakeholder manager here, Lauren, who's a scientist by trade. Had her own company for 10 years advising SMEs. So she's started with us last year and is starting to get up to speed with that kind of program and making those connections between how we develop our European ecosystems and how we develop stuff here.
it's probably an area we're wanting to develop more.
Yeah.
In all honesty, we've done bits in Scotland, but we certainly need to wrap that up more. So part of it is just about having a physical presence. We've got Jim who's going to be operating the site for us there, which is great for a Scottish hire.
Yes.
So that does help, just actually having a physical body. We've also had the Kadans Innovation Summit in London, which we were very kindly a speaker for last month.
Twice, yes.
We were invited occupiers from across our network to meet and innovate across Europe. So there's lots of things we can do to try and help connect people.
And I'm sure there's lots of people and entities in Glasgow and Scotland who'd be keen to have conversations with you as well around how, that can be done.
Yeah, and it's something we've picked up more recently with Scottish Government and other officials, people reaching out to us to try and understand. And the success of this programme is probably part of that. They're starting to get out there, they're kind of looking and going, well, that's great that you're developing this. How did that happen? And again, why Glasgow? Why you chosen here? And what can we do to help turbocharge and keep going with the life science strategy that the government had up here? On the real estate side, it can be quite tricky because it's not the curse, but the blessing and curse, double-edged sword. We can invest our capital across pretty much every European country if we decide to do it. So we've got to kind of decide where is the best place to put it. So that engagement with people like SE and Invest in Glasgow and other bodies is really important. Next one. So I guess we've talked a little bit about Kadans and some photos there from across our portfolios. I'm probably quite familiar with them. It's a whole range of solutions that we actually provide our customers, from kind of what you'd expect traditional office space in our building to the write-ups all the way through to TL2 labs. We've got semiconductors, we've got clean rooms in some of our facilities. I think we've actually got one up in the west of Scotland and one of our occupiers up there. So it's a whole range of technical real estate depending on exactly of where the building is, what that market needs at the exact time. The key message probably on the real estate side is not all of our buildings are brand new, but especially in the UK, we are in development phase. Most of the buildings that we are coming through now are new purpose-built light health innovation hub. So at the core of the design ethos is this has got to be a building that works for the people who are operating in it. It's not an office that's then repurposed and thinking, oh, how are we going to make this work?
Get it right.
The critical design stuff is there. Look, the proof will be in the pudding as we go for the next couple of months with some of the occupiers that we're speaking to now. Does the technical challenges stand up based on other buildings we've had across the UK, like our GMP space in London, where we've tested having multiple clean rooms on the ground floor there, massive air change requirements. It can take it. So we know we design great buildings for our customers, and I guess we just want to get HIH filled now. So it's super exciting. But
moving on to that piece.
Like I say, most of our occupiers are actually SMEs. You're going to see some big names probably on this slide, names that we will all recognise. But actually, the majority of our occupiers across Europe, not just the UK, are SMEs. They're small companies, and they don't have big property teams. They don't have big FM teams. They're not necessarily technical people. That's what we're here for. But I guess focusing probably on Scotland specifically, we've got 4 buildings up at the west of Scotland Science Park, which is great. We've already got a foothold in Glasgow. Repsol being one of them, obviously your former employer.
I know Repsol well, yes. I used to work for them before I came across to the university, and then they're a partner in one of the Cygnus projects around spatial transcriptomics. So yes, it's one of the good things about Glasgow. Even though you move, your relationships, stay with you, and you're all still part of that same ecosystem, and there's still lots of ways to work together, even if you're sitting in a different part of the ecosystem as such.
For sure. Lots of interesting people in there, and look, we've got our innovation centre in London, which is super. We've done, I think, probably half, maybe more, of the London transactions last year, just in innovation centre alone, which is nearly full. Some super interesting people that are coming into there, and that experience of running smaller size laboratories is going to be useful because we've got that at innovation hubs. So going through that experience is going to allow us to lift and shift a whole bunch of knowledge. So we're not starting from scratch here, and has proved the concept that people want kind of innovation space.
Yes.
They want small innovation space, flexible space, and a good quality building, and they're willing to go for it. So and obviously from the map stating the obvious, we're not confined to the Golden Triangle. That's one thing I want to kind of stress quite clearly here. We're not an investor that will say, yep, just needs to be in the Golden Triangle. We're not looking anywhere else. We will follow the science. That's why we're up here in Scotland, got things in Manchester, looking elsewhere, and that's similar theme across Europe. It won't just be we're only in Amsterdam or we're only in Berlin. We will go where the science is good. And that could be challenging from a real estate side perspective, but
well, I'm hoping over time we have more dots in Glasgow there of additional buildings as we go. Yes.
Yeah, like I said, we're in a development phase. We've got another 1.5 million square feet in the UK coming online. We've got lots of stuff for that connectivity. Hopefully, will benefit everyone. It's not just going to be down in the Golden Triangle where we're building a lot of stuff. That network will allow us to put people in the right places. Yeah, that's a little bit about where we are. So I guess one of the big things we're here to talk about is the Health Innovation Hub and what it's going to bring to Glasgow, when it's going to be ready. It should look like that. I'm going there tomorrow, so
it's starting to look like that. It's starting to look like that. I see it every morning as I drive in, so I tick it off.
Yeah, so the hard hat and big boots are ready.
Yeah,
great. Yes, this is our, like I mentioned, for purpose-built laboratory building. It's about 87,000 square feet total. We have a cafe in there, shower facilities, car parking, centralised gases, CO2, compressed air. It's primed, ready to go effectively. Fingers crossed, August time if we're on track, which we are.
Yes.
So hopefully our development manager won't shoot me for saying that.
Well, I'm sure the sky will be that sunny as well.
Yeah, of course, always bring sunshine. But yeah, it's got all the technical requirements that people would expect in terms of number of air changes. The building's structured in a way that allows us to manage chemical waste, clinical waste. It's got shared equipment room for the people on the ground floor we talked about, and plenty of roof space for plant and equipment. So yes, all the stuff that I find quite interesting around the building stuff, which might be a bit boring to everyone else, but it's actually really important. Things like the vibration factor of the floors, it becomes really important for people.
I learned a lot more about that side of buildings when I was involved in establishing the COVID lab. As well, much more than I ever needed or ever thought I wanted to know, but it has given me a greater appreciation of that side of designing buildings and really working out how do you build the right space for laboratories with different kinds of capabilities, requirements, different kinds of kits, but also how you do that allowing the growth as well, and how quickly technology in this area changes and evolves, and therefore how do you try and future-proof as well for what might be coming in.
Yeah, exactly. We design our buildings so you can effectively split and carve up depending on what you need, the floor plates. Usually 4 is the kind of optimum of how you do it. You can do it more. But again, that's going back to the core design principles. When you're probably sitting around the table listening to some of this stuff, that's what we agreed, is to make the building flexible. So as people expand, move out, take on more work, the building can flex from office to lab space, lab to office, depending on exactly what people want to do. All costs money, but the whole point is that it's got the capability to do it. But we're not compromised. Things like sustainability, it's going to be a BREEAM excellent building. It's wired square platinum, so it will be very similar to what you'd expect in the office building just over in the city centre. These buildings are still occupied by people, scientists or people as well, right? They've got the same requirements, and companies have got the same requirements about ESG as everyone else. So we've got that balance of the technical requirement of the building, but also sustainability too.
Yes, and of course, excitingly as well for me, the ground floor is going to house the Digital Health Validation Lab, which is one of the new innovation assets that the programme has created as well. We will talk about in a future webinar in more detail, But what is really exciting is that that gives us space to have co-design, so to be able to bring members of the public, patients, clinicians, healthcare professionals, whoever that may be, in to work with those innovators to help design those products. And then the other thing that we'll add that we don't have at the moment are simulation spaces as well. So, those environments where you can recreate a clinical setting. As you look at how you develop your product, you consider safety or technical performance before you move it into those real world environments as well.
Yeah. So yeah, everyone likes some pictures. So I've just dropped in some CGIs. Should be latest. It just gives you a bit of an indication of what the space will look like. We're big for internal staircases. Anyone who's Google's Kadans building will see internal staircases. So we're going to do one here too. The cafe is an important thing. It's also the hub of the building. It's also going to be open to members of the public, and kind of touched on that as well. As this is not supposed to be a building that is putting a barrier around the community. It's supposed to be open and welcoming and getting people in and making the local community feel like it's a place that they could work. It's not supposed to be a standoff building with massive security and doors that don't let you in if you don't have the right passes. It's not being designed again for that. So.
No, and then beyond that, we're working together to, look at what could that programme of sort of a community-focused or community-based activities be when the building is live and such like as well. And the sort of community engagement teams from both sides are really starting to go out and understand what do the community want to be able to use that communal space for, and what can we all do to facilitate that. So now that we've kind of set the scene, should probably get to the question, that was posed in the webinar title. So can Glasgow take on the golden triangle?
It's totally provocative, I guess. Trying through it to a direct answer. So I don't think it needs to try and take on the golden triangle. It is its own thing. The scale of the development in Cambridge, helping millions of square foot in development, 2 or 3 million from planning, rents are 2.5, 3 times maybe what you get in here. It's a very, very different market. But Glasgow is emerging as a real challenger to the market more generally. We've also got Manchester, where I'm living at the moment, and Birmingham. I'd say Manchester is probably the one that's got most advanced. It's got the Oxford Road corridor. We've also got development there. So it's pretty far ahead in terms of making sure that there's enough stock in the market and developing that ecosystem. But actually, Glasgow is ready to do its own thing. We're going to be able to talk around, I guess, why Glasgow, why Scotland, some of the fundamentals from a European perspective of what we look at when we're making those investment decisions. So that's what we're going to get stuck into now, if everyone's okay with that. So yeah, why Scotland? Like I said before, we can invest in any European country, so why we chosen here? I've not got that much influence, even though I'd like to say it's the Scottish accent that gets the board to approve this. Glasgow is a great city. It is well known from, I'm talking European perspective now, across the markets. It's a trusted place to do business in terms of Scotland, the legal system. It's got a wide professional base of occupiers already. We know the success the city's had with some of the financial institutions here, Morgan Stanley and Barclays and others. So it's already got great fundamentals, which helps. It's not starting from scratch, and that's a real positive thing. Strong cultural ties kind of help as well. The fact that the doctor's so good at speaking English can often be important. But I mean, a lot of this really comes down to the research institutions, and it's probably not going to be a great surprise for people that's what I say. But that is from our side a really, really, really big thing. The country's got top universities. I did do a bit of research on some of these stats, and the one for Dundee certainly interested me. The number of concentration of life science scientists in the UK. So hopefully it's accurate, but I'm not surprised. My old university, Heriot Watts. I'm very proud to have gone there. It's got some really interesting stuff going on across there. So it's got a lot of the things that you'd expect an investor to look at. Nothing is massively surprising in that regard.
No, but when I looked at this slide initially, I thought, oh, I'm at University of Glasgow, we're not mentioned on that, but it's because you've got a whole separate slide on Glasgow, so I let you off with it.
Don't think I forgot to tell you, don't worry. Yeah, and when we're going into new places, or looking into new ventures, the people we're going to partner with is absolutely crucial. And I'm sure it was the exact same for you in any venture. And from what the guys have told me before I came, and all my experiences with you and the rest of the team has been absolutely fantastic. That's a massive thing, you know. Ollie, Amy, Sean, it takes a real team, and it's been nothing than positive vibes and real desire to try and get Health Innovation Hub and the rest of the Living Lab programs delivered. That really helps. There's a lot of stuff on that slide, and I don't want to go through all of them, but a few things I think are really important is around the institutions that are probably already here. It shows that there's a centre of excellence coalescing. It's the ecosystem type thing we always talk about, and that's really important when we start looking at where are our customers going to come from. So again, real estate hat back on. We've got to fill our buildings. Where are they going to come from if they're not coming through the university, working in places like the Nanofabrication Centre or the Shared Research Facility, or the many that are probably not included on this? So don't take offence if you're not on it. That's where our customers are going to come from. They're going to spin out of these universities, and Glasgow is globally known. I can tell you from conversations with European contacts, people know Glasgow's got some of the best life science going on at the moment. So that certainly helps from our perspective. So yeah, well done, the University of Glasgow.
Well, it's been a journey for us, and it's an area that certainly over the past sort of 3 to 5 years, you know, has been one of much more strategic priority for us, and really thinking about what do we need to be doing in that innovation space, not just to support our own researchers and think about, you know, the creation of new products and companies and such like, but actually to meet the needs of not just Scottish companies, you know, but how do we start to attract international investment into Glasgow as well, and then to really demonstrate, you know, everything that does exist here in Glasgow, and why actually it makes sense to be here and in buildings, you know, like the Health Innovation Hub within a stone's throw of great technical and R&D capabilities within the city, you know, translational infrastructure. If you're working on the kind of healthcare innovation side, you know, just down the road, you've got people who are involved in, you know, in advanced therapies and such like. So actually, when you look at the whole of the Glasgow city region, with really strong universities who can produce graduates who have the skills in the workforce, you know, to come and work in these companies, there's an awful lot of good and positive things happening, and we are very connected, you know, to the rest of Scotland, the rest of UK as well. So as you start to need to build what you do and look, you know, across multiple sites or multiple geographies, a lot of those relationships are already there, and you know, we can help facilitate those for you.
Absolutely. Again, lots of slides with lots of information. Beth and I did have a bit of a chat about some of this stuff, and you know, a lot of the things that I've talked about, we'll talk about, is on these slides are not within our purview as a company to influence the university probably a little bit more. These are pretty big things when you start thinking about infrastructure works and, you know, cultural vibrancy. And I guess I was going to pull out 3 to highlight. The graduate retention rates, pulled from a report recently, I think is amazing. It's great. It demonstrates that people want to stay.
Or like me, they come back. I'm a Glasgow graduate. I went and worked elsewhere and came back because this was still, you know, home for me, and the pool was still here.
You know, again, you look at Manchester as a sort of barometer. I think they've got a really, really high retention rate, if not one of the highest, as well. So that's because all the other things outside the immediate university business world is working. They've got the accommodation, they've got the cultural elements that people want. A reason, giving them reason for people to stay. And that's a much bigger question that we'll ever be able to answer for. But you think of, you know, the great nights out you can have in Glasgow. I've certainly had a few. The restaurants, you know, all those things are really important in terms of when students finish the university, think, can I see myself living here? And if they can, and they're excited about it, and they don't think, right, I've got to jump on a plane to London like a lot of my counterparts did back in the day. You know, you've got through that first gate of, okay, they're going to stay. Okay, how can we then use them? How can they use their own knowledge and skills and experience to develop something interesting? And that as a simple data point is super useful because it shows that people are wanting to stay.
Well, and I think as well, that's where, the river plays a part in that as well. And there's been a lot of work done over recent years, to really look at how we kind of boost opportunities along the riverside. How do we create new sort of cultural opportunities, new kind of nightlife, those kind of things, things for business. But also last year, we had the new bridge opening up as well, which is within walking distance of the Health Innovation Hub. And a way again to really remove some of those barriers that, a river can be very positive, but it can also be divisive. Sure. And so how again do we use that to start to facilitate and open up and show that, as you say, beyond the technical elements that are here, all of those other things that contribute to where do you want to live, what do you want your life to look like? If you want to have children and families, what does that look like? And, if Glasgow does an awful lot of good in that sense as well. And I can see why people want to come and live here.
Yeah, for sure. Lived here very, very briefly, but did a lot of commuting from east to west.
Yes.
A lot of time in the city, a lot of friends who moved across and have stayed as well. So it's, I guess on that front, it's a big tick for the city and the place in terms of all the things on the list. I think affordability is a big thing as well. London's really expensive for houses, flats. Manchester's very expensive too. Again, as a graduate, thinking about that quality of life and
disposable income and being able to do something.
Actually doing something rather than just continually firing it into rental costs. So that's a big plus. And I mentioned it two or three times, the cultural piece. I think it's really, really important. Make sure that we've got a thriving arts scene where we kind of invest in, and there's lots of stuff going on in Glasgow. Everyone knows that, so I don't need to go over old ground. But that again is a really big thing that I personally look out for. Is there's just some cool stuff going on in the city, and it's exciting and makes people feel like there's a buzz about it, about the place, which is also important. I guess kind of in the European context, which is the second half of this slide. Glasgow has been a global international city for many, many, many years. So it's known as a great place to come and do business. And the UK government obviously worked quite hard, as well as Scottish government, to get people to come into our cities across the UK. So there is support already for the various government strategies, including the Scottish government strategy for life science. Seems to be very successful by all accounts. So that does help. That does give people confidence that there's a plan in place and things are actually happening.
Actually, having a meeting with a company who are not in Glasgow just now, but are very interested in being in Glasgow on Friday with some other members of the team.
Nice. Yeah.
So hopefully I'll be talking to you about them as a potential tenant for the Health Innovation Hub.
An online deal.
Yes.
It's recorded now, so no pressure. I guess bringing it probably back to a property point, I may just briefly talked about Oxford and Cambridge. People are pretty cost sensitive, or a lot of companies are cost sensitive. Many companies want to be in Cambridge, want to be in Oxford, London. That's their certain parameters, and that's always going to be difficult to shift away from. The kind of fully fitted rents in Oxford are mid-70s, maybe more. Oxford's early, Cambridge probably early 70s. That's 2-3 times probably what you could get for some of the other places around the UK, and definitely a lot more than in Glasgow. So from a pure cost perspective, a lot of businesses that are potentially global will just look at those cost lines and think, right, well, you tick a lot of these boxes already. Why wouldn't you seriously consider coming to Glasgow when the cost base for real estate is so much more cost effective?
It's where I often say as well for international companies who are looking at Glasgow as well, is that actually the cost of doing kind of some of the R&D here or clinical trials is less than in other places as well. So actually you can get more for your investment as such if you think strategically about different locations where you do that work, you generate that evidence, and also as you think about your kind of market entry strategies and regulation, data can be generated in other geographies to support a regulatory submission for the US, for example. So there's lots of things to factor into actually how you really can maximise what you're spending your investment on to allow you to accelerate that product to market quicker.
For sure. And yeah, we definitely are seeing people becoming more cost sensitive. You know, money's always important when companies, especially startups, when they get their funding, it's, like I say, there's a bit of a sort of mind block with some people about having to be in certain locations, but there's plenty of other people who are quite happy being elsewhere as well. So to play on that.
I'll just, before we move on, Mark, just put a reminder out again for people to start thinking about any questions that they may have and sharing them with us.
Yeah. So I've just tried to pull out again some challenges and how we can potentially support. We've talked about the competition from the gold triangle is kind of core of the conversation today, but I think Glasgow has got an opportunity to stand on its own 2 feet and say, look, we are different, we're more cost effective, all the things you've talked about. That does resonate with people. And there's going to be a lot of shared challenges that other cities face around funding and how to create that ecosystem. And there's lots of focus on the southeast, as there always is, around superclusters and how do you get the sort of Silicon Valley thing going down south. One thing we could think about is how do we do a similar model up in Scotland, connecting the cities. As long as the government keep investing and keep committing, Scottish government keep investing and committing into growing this sector. I think they're pushing against an open door. I think that collaboration with the policymakers is important. We're starting to do a bit more of that. We're starting to get more requests from people to come and speak to us directly around how we think that could happen. What is it that we think the challenges are going to be? Again, going back to the boring real estate stuff, building the Health Innovation Hub is probably the same cost if we dropped it in a whole bunch of other cities, maybe a bit more expensive, but the rents are very different. So from a simple investment model, there's a gap there. So someone has to usually fill that gap. Nothing's for free. That's where programs like Living Labs are so important, because it can help do that and fill the market to demonstrate that it works. And then hopefully once the dominoes start going, proof of concept. And again, we can start looking to the future. What does the next building potentially look like?
Well, it's that seed funding in a different context, isn't it? It's seed funding the growth of the physical infrastructure that is needed, because we know in Glasgow and Scotland we don't have enough lab and office space, and Health Innovation Hub will help, but actually demand still far outstrips what the Health Innovation Hub is going to deliver.
Correct. So I guess what can we do with Kadans? That's a key thing. It's not all about just making demands from government bodies, university and others. We've also invested in the West of Scotland already. We need to keep investing in those assets, making sure they are sustainable, good long-term assets at the park, but also continue to deliver the space here in the city, which is obviously a wider conversation, but that's something we're keen to keep talking to everyone about. And ultimately, the space at the Health Innovation Hub is built in a way that is flexible. We talked about it already, that people are supposed to be able to scale up. If they scale up quickly, we've got a full building, which hopefully we will.
Yes.
Where do they go? It's a relatively simple question. And in other markets, you go to the building next door, or the landlord has many buildings, or you go somewhere around the corner. That's maybe not always going to be the case. So that's part of the solution that we can potentially bring, and also doing that connection piece across Europe. Kind of touched on that again before. We probably need to wrap that up. We will do, obviously, as the building starts to come live and we see actually who goes in our buildings, depending on what sector they're in. How do we connect them with people across the UK, across Europe? That's where that will start to almost self-generate a market in and of itself.
Yes, but for me, one of the risks with that is that companies feel they have to, go elsewhere. And as you say, we've got that challenge just now of companies grow at the moment. Where are they going to go? So how do we balance, what comes next, and the continued growth, so that we are creating sticky jobs? There are reasons that the companies can stay here, and we don't fall into that trap of they have to go elsewhere to grow. Or, even on the non-property side, as we think about how you get products to market, we need to look at the wider ecosystem and what we can do to facilitate that, to accelerate it, so that, again, companies don't think they have to move to somewhere in Europe or the US, because actually that's the quickest route to get their product to market and to start generating revenue. So there's lots of components to this, but that's why we're all working together in the areas that make sense for us. and all talking to each other about how we try and join that up. I think that's one of the key things. It's the communications between all of the stakeholders involved in all parts of this. We all want the same thing. We want companies to succeed. We want them to grow. We want them to scale. The roles that we can play in it are all slightly different. But if we don't actually talk to each other about how we do that collectively, we will struggle to deliver on that.
Absolutely. And just for clarity, that connection piece across Europe isn't stealing people away from Glasgow.
No, I know, but I just want to make sure that's what nobody thinks is the plan.
Absolutely, for sure. No, this is about connecting interesting people within our networks who might want to speak to each other. Again, we've had examples of European companies who want to set up a little UK base, for example, for a whole bunch of different reasons. It's not a full operation. It's a small lab, for example, in London. That's great. That's more people. That call could be, I want to set up a small lab in Glasgow. We've already got a relationship. That's great. That's hopefully creating something here as well as elsewhere. So we very much see it as growing the pie rather than taking the pie and sort of moving it around different places, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So yeah, I guess that probably brings us to, I guess, the call to action and what we're trying to achieve. Probably got a bit of a flavour for it. Just to summarise where my head's at, that Glasgow can stand on its own 2 feet. It doesn't need to try and go head to head with the Golden Triangle. It's already got a lot of the great fundamentals, and what we're building at the Health Innovation Hub, West Scotland as well, is proof that we can create something really exciting. So I come into sessions like this really enthused. I'm really excited coming up to Glasgow because I can see what the potential should be. So let's just keep focusing on what we're going to deliver and then just build the momentum from there. It's a great time to be in Glasgow. It's already meeting our targets that we set in the strategy to make it a 8 billion turnover industry. I think it was up at 11 from one of the other sides that I had. The Health Innovation Hub coming August.
Yes.
That's going to make a difference, obviously. I'm also going to say that. We talked about the thriving talent pipeline that we've got coming out of the universities, massively important. We talked about retention rates.
Yeah.
So all of these things are lining up. Got some grants and R&D relief already as well. So it's primed to be a great spot to be in. So I'm really excited, and we've got some great conversations with occupiers already. Come and fill the space, which is great, which is what we want. I guess how can people get involved? Well, we always have many conversations with Scottish Enterprise. We need to continue having them. We need to have a deeper relationship with people that can invest in Glasgow. This is a Kadans perspective. Understand what more we can do to help the city, take on those next steps, because it's great that you build this, but what next? We don't just want to go, cool, we've built it and that's it. Got some interesting companies, got leases, that's us. We walk away, that's obviously not our style. That's not how we've grown. It doesn't work. We know it's the engagement piece is actually what helps your business grow. And continue working with you guys and other interesting people to keep delivering on the Glasgow. You can't do it on your own. So again, other people can't do it on their own.
No.
So if you want to speak about the Health Innovation Hub, give us a shout, give Ruth a shout, give anyone on the team a shout, and we can tell you a bit more.
So we have some questions starting to come in. The first couple are quite technical on the property side, but before we get to them, do you have an ideal tenant in mind for the Health Innovation Hub, or is it a sort of a dream type of company or type tenant as you guys see it?
Well, for me personally, I'd love to have a Scottish-based company, a company that's started here, that's on that growth path, and perhaps maybe has floated with the idea of leaving the city, leaving the country. And have had their head turned, or looked at the Health Innovation Hub and thought, actually, we don't just need to follow the path that everyone else has, and there's a place for us that we can actually that technically meets what we need to do, with a good landlord, with a good partner, good stakeholders, good story behind it, which is part of something, the regeneration of that part of government. That's probably my ideal company. So it's not necessarily I'd love to have a CDMO in there, or I'd love to have a big pharma company. It's more that story that is probably quite interesting to me. I'm sure my boss would say, big pharma companies with big long leases paying lots of rent is what you want, Mark. But for me, that's probably what I'd go for.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a great ideal tenant to have in there as well. But for me, one of the key things is, it's companies who want to be part of this ecosystem, and they see how they can collaborate and support what we're trying to do on a much bigger scale as such. And they actually want to be working with the researchers in the universities. They want to be looking at how they start to plan for their workforce needs and how does that link back into the degrees and the graduate skill set and things like that. But then also they want to be advocating, for Glasgow and talking about all of the good things that are going on here. So being part of that, the kind of wider engagement activity as well. And also, people who want to engage with the local community and say, look, this is what we're doing. This is how we hope it's going to make a difference to you or your family members moving forward as well. Because I think that's key for how we really look to capitalise, the ground floor of the Health Innovation Hub and what comes next. As you mentioned, the community have to see it as a place for them as well. And so they have to understand what kind of things are happening in there, what science is going on. But I think the way that they connect with that is, what does it mean for me?
Yes. Exactly.
And how's that going to make my life better?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And ultimately, through a UK platform, we get inquiries from all over the world. And we have got proof that there's companies based in Scotland who contact us about space down south over the border. Yeah. Which is not what, from a Glasgow perspective, we want to see. We want people to be able to stay in region, in the city. It's a big thing, moving your company, your business, and lifting up, going to somewhere new. Most people probably don't want to do it. So that's the opportunity we've got, and that's, again, as you can probably tell, what excites me, what gets me up in the morning is the potential of who we're going to have in here, what their story is going to be, like I touched on at the top with the dentist that has cancer, who we're going to have in these buildings, and what's their story going to be, and how are they going to impact in the future, and what's going to happen in that building, and how's it going to influence our lives. So hopefully there'll be some really cool stuff happening there.
Right, Mark, these questions are definitely for you. They're not for me. Okay, so in your view, what is the extent of the development viability gap that you see for Scottish projects?
Yeah, I mean, there is one. I think that's the answer. The actual gap in terms of a pound sign depends on obviously what you're building. I mean, it's many millions of pounds. I mean, like I said, with the rentals, when you're looking at somewhere like a Cambridge and they're 70, Oxfords are 70, 60s, and Scotland rents are floating between early 20s, mid 20s. Again, depending on the quality of the building, old, new, what you can do in it, that creates a problem. So that's why there's grant funding for these things, to try and fill those gaps, because otherwise they're very difficult to make stack. And I think if you're this building has been built effectively speculatively, right? We don't have, obviously, you guys going on the ground floor. Yes. But it's not like we've got half the building let to someone. And even in Manchester, key developers there won't build speculative lab building. They do have to have occupiers in there because they won't get bank funding for it. So this is obviously an example where backed partnership, we backed the model, and the funding from the Living Labs programme has helped effectively make it stack. But there's a considerable gap at the moment. But this is where you've got to have faith that the building's going to work, the customers are going to come in, and you almost need to kind of create that market yourself. And if you don't do it, then we never move forward. No.
And so the second part of that question is, so, linked to the fact that there is the gap, would you consider income sharing agreements with public sector funders in return for capital funding contribution?
Well, probably one for my development colleague. I guess we're always open to commercial conversations with people, not to dodge the answer. It's, we've got however many 27, 28 campuses across Europe. We're very closely with Utrecht and the university campuses there. There's lots of different models that we've applied, because every country is slightly different. Every municipality is different. Universities have their own structures. So we're always open to conversations with people to see how these things could work. So it's not a yes or no. It's kind of a come and speak to us about these things. And again, that's demonstrated by where we've gone and done business. We've not just stayed in the Golden Triangle. We've gone to Manchester, come to Glasgow, we looked at various other places in Germany. They're not kind of traditional markets necessarily, so we're open to those conversations. And if the right kind of structure is there, then obviously we'll deeply consider it. But this is where, I guess, on the private sector side, the public sector really needs to help fill some of that gap and trust people like us that we've got that bank of information. And when we say it's a difficult market and this is what the rents are going to be, it's probably what they're going to be.
And linked to that, there's a question about, what do you think the rents in Scotland would need to be to be commercially viable without that need for, public sector support, but then how do we not price ourselves out of the market if there aren't opportunities or people willing to, look at those models?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. There's so many variables of, what property talking about, where does the land come from? If it's gifted by a university, then you don't have to buy it. If you have to, as part of a joint venture procurement exercise, like there's been a few of in Scotland, where you have to put lots of money in for infrastructure. Sometimes, many millions, tens of millions of pounds. That will all alter exactly what that rental level needs to be, because ultimately you're looking at just a return. So it's not difficult. It's not easy necessarily to give a kind of straight answer to the question. It's kind of many kind of possible ways of looking at that. Again, probably sounds like it's dodging the answer, but it's, if you start to give a range to people, it's not necessarily helpful. But the more the rents are, effectively, the more attractive the investment opportunities are to people. And again, when the rents are probably not comparable to other markets, London, Manchester, but again, useful one to compare it with. I think their lab rates are in the 40s, probably, pushing towards 50 for maybe brand new lab space, and we're maybe half of that in Glasgow, broadly speaking, again, depending on what you're looking at. That's the kind of gap we're talking about, and that's just a pure, you can go online and Google and see what labs you can get in Manchester or Bristol or other places versus here.
So that's all the questions that have come in, and thank you everybody who shared a question with us. If on reflection you go away and there's some burning question that you're desperate to ask, then please email the team that you registered to the webinar with, and we can pass those questions on and facilitate responses coming back. Mark, thank you very much for coming to join me today. It's great to have somebody who is excited and passionate about talking about Glasgow, as I am. Thank you again to the audience for joining us. Couple of sort of a housekeeping of reminders is, so we have been recording all of these webinars and they are now available on the web pages. So again, if listening to this today you thought of some colleagues who might be interested in hearing the conversation, the recordings will be up there probably within the next week or so. I say that and somebody in the team will tell me it will take longer, but please do check the web pages. And our next webinar is scheduled for the 18th of March, where I'll be talking with MR Coiltech, who are a radio frequency coil engineering company, one of our tenants within the Clinical Innovation Zone, a partner in the Living Lab programme. And I'll be talking to them about what their journey has been like and how being located in Glasgow and part of this healthcare innovation ecosystem is helping them as a small company. So thank you very much. I look forward to sharing the next webinar with you all in the future. Do
you want me to jump in with the answer to who this quote is from?
Yes, I guess we should. We shouldn't keep him.
Well, my research assures me it's a famous Scottish inventor, almost a mechanical engineer and a chemist. Is James Watt. So, yeah.
I'm sure if we're wrong, somebody will tell us.
I'll blame ChatGPT or someone else for giving me wrong information. But yeah, so thanks everyone. Thanks for today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mark.